recording it, Karen? Thank you. Oh my gosh. Okay. All right. So despite all we can say, many who are real alcoholics are not going to believe that they're in this class. How many of you did not want to believe that you actually fell into the class of being a real alcoholic? It's hard. That's why that's another reason why we spend so much time in this, is because they don't just want to tell you. The first step is not on the wall. The first step is in the big book. The first step is the title to the first 50 pages. I got to really understand this. I got to really understand. If I'm not having a gut level experience with this first step, how am I going to believe that something greater than myself can help manage my life? How am I ever going to believe that I need something much greater than me to get me through this unless I have a real gut level experience with this work? That's why, when I first came into AA, nobody was taking me through the work this way. I had no idea. I was sharing every time I talk to people. We get a lot of people that do the work this way that have had years of experience or years of sobriety and have never done the work this way and are on fire for this. Or I remember when I came in to start doing the work this way, I had 4 years sober, and I was pissed. I was so pissed off that I spent 4 years miserable because first of all, I knew I was an alcoholic, but I didn't know what alcoholism was. I had no idea that it was spiritual, mental, and physical. I had zero idea. And I didn't even, I might have heard that in rooms, chanted every now and then, but I didn't know what it means. So as we go through this, we're gonna look at some analogies and some examples of a period of time separated from alcohol. What does my life look like, and what happens to people? Says
Leanne.
Yeah.
Just I think when you read from the book, do you mind just telling us what page number you are and about where?
Oh yeah. So I'm just on page 31 right now. Yeah. So it says, despite all we can say, so on the second paragraph. So despite all we can say, many who are real alcoholics are not going to believe that they're in this class. By every form of self-deception and experimentation will try to prove themselves exceptions to the rule. I tried to prove myself an exception to the rule many times. I tried to say I'm only going to go out for 2 drinks. That never worked. I don't know. It never worked. I tried. Lasted maybe 30 minutes. If anyone who is showing an ability to control his drinking could do the right about face and drink like a gentleman, our hats are off to them. What does that probably mean? Maybe they're not real alcoholics. I've run across a couple people like that. I have a very good friend who is not, she's spent 8 years in AA and did the work this way and could not, she just couldn't, like, when she was doing the work, she just couldn't relate to the physical allergy. She's like, I don't understand. She's like, I drink and I do crazy things. And I go, that's not alcoholism. That's drunkenness. You don't have to be. People who aren't alcoholics do stupid things when they drink. That doesn't mean that you're alcoholic. So we can qualify people now. We can ask them just a few questions. We should be qualifying people and finding out so that they can find out their truth. And she found out her truth. And to this day, I know her. She's still my friend. Like 4 years ago, she has a normal life. My hat's off to her. Good for you. That's great. It's great. But it's rare that it happens, but it does happen. Okay. We hear this here. How many tried different methods? Drinking beer only, drinking natural wine. I don't know. Is there unnatural wine? Is there such a thing as unnatural wine?
Fortified.
Really?
Write it down.
No, whatever. Not drinking, not going to parties. I might have tried that. Switching from hard alcohol to like wine, but like how many of you would have you say you only had 2 glasses of wine and you get big goblets? I only have 2 glasses of wine a night, and like it was like 2 bottles, like 1 bottle. Yeah, I drink 2 glasses of wine a night. When you go to the doctor's office, they ask how much do you drink? Just two glasses of wine. It's like, wow, your liver enzymes are really high. Like that was me. The doctor. I'm like, I don't know why. It must have been the Tylenol I took. Yeah. All right, so I'm gonna go over to page 32. So they're Marty Mann. I don't know if any of you have heard of Marty Mann. One of the things that she had said was to step over to the nearest bar room and try some controlled drinking. Try to stop abruptly. Try it more than once. It will not take long before you decide, if you are honest with yourself about it. It may be worth a case of bad jitters. The 2 drinks a day every day, if you can't control, because the question is not can I stop, but can I moderate? Can I drink only 2 drinks and be okay with that? And if you can, then you're probably not a real alcoholic. And then you haven't been able to diagnose you've been able to diagnose yourself, but then you'll be able to find out whether you are the real alcoholic or not, just by being able to manage the amount that you drink. If you can't manage the amount that you drink, then you obviously have the physical allergy, and then abstinence is the only solution to your problem. All right, not drinking at all. So there's a story of a man who is 30 and had stopped drinking for 20 years. Just stopped drinking. The book says he made up his mind that until he had been successful in business, had retired, he would not touch another drop. An exceptional man. He remained what? He remained sober for 25 years? No, he remained what? Bone dry. Bone dry for 25 years. 25 years being bone dry. I have a father-in-law who was who is alcoholic. I mean, I guess I'm not supposed to diagnose him, but the doctor had told him that he had like stage 4 cirrhosis or stage 3 cirrhosis, and then he had to quit. So he's bone dry. Does not want to go to meetings, doesn't want to have anything to do. He's been bone dry. And every single time he goes to the doctor, he asks the doctor the same question: can I drink again? Can I drink again? Could you imagine white knuckling it? For 8 years, he's been bone dry. So this guy here, 25 years, he's been bone dry at age 55. After being successful, he fell victim to the belief that every alcoholic has, right? After a long period of sobriety, maybe we've evolved. Maybe I can drink now. Maybe things have changed, And then what happens? And he puts on his carpet slippers, and then he ends up dying. How many have heard stories like this? Like it's not even different from 1939 to 2020. Today, I hear stories like this all the time. I hear people who had 20 years and went back out and drank and died. I hear people who had 20 years, 30 years, went back out and drank and cannot pull it together. They just can't pull it together. They can't get themselves sober again. Hopefully none of us fall into that. It's a powerful lesson. Most of us believe that if we remain sober for a long stretch, we could therefore drink normally, showing you that 25 years without a drink. It has nothing to do with the physical allergy. 25 years. Why is it that regardless of what happened to us prior, we seem to forget the things that manifested in us? We have this short attention span that we seem to forget, or maybe we believe that we could do it differently this time, or maybe we believe that we just don't give a shit, right? And we just want to drink no matter what, right? Because just don't drink no matter what. Does that work for anybody? Because I drink no matter what. I drink no matter what. Okay. Then it talks about young people may be encouraged by this man's experience to think that they can stop. And then it talks about women. I've always been very interested in this last paragraph on page 33. It says, to be gravely affected, one does not necessarily have to drink for a long time, nor take quantities some of us have. And they're talking about this back in the 30s. So things have not changed. Alcoholism has not changed in men and women. It affects us differently than it affects you guys. I look at my father. He's 81 years old, and I don't understand how he's still alive. I don't understand it. I mean, he drinks alcoholically. I don't understand it. He's been in and out of the hospital. He's got emphysema. He's smoked for 50 years, Camel Unfiltered. He's an old Marine. He's got emphysema, COPD, and he keeps going to the hospital because his lungs keep filling up with fluid. And then he comes back home. He gets back home, and he's, back at the bottle again and vaping. He's vaping. He's 80 years old, and he's vaping, and he's still alive. I don't understand how he's able to do this. He's able to drink a lot longer. Me, different story. How many of you women noticed that alcoholism took effect at a much younger age? I'm not saying that in all cases. A lot of men find out. I mean, we can drink ourselves into oblivion, at any age, but it seems to affect us women a lot sooner, doesn't it? says this is particularly true in women. Potential female alcoholics turn into the real thing, and they are gone beyond recall in a few years. Certain drinkers who would be greatly insulted if we called them alcoholics are astonished at their inability to stop. We are familiar with the symptoms, see large numbers of potential alcoholics among young people everywhere. And at this time that this was written, it says that this was published, but in 2011, U.S. and Canada membership, very slowly, about 1/11 of AA's population were under 30. So, like I said, it doesn't necessarily always hold true, but I think for women, it really holds true that we get here a lot sooner than men. Our bodies are just not made, like, obviously, we're not as strong as you guys physically. So you're able to drink longer than us, unfortunately. What's that?
You can outrun us, though.
No, I can outrun you.
Yeah. Oh, good point. Okay.
No, I can't run out. All right. So, all right. So for those of us who are unable to drink moderately, I'm on page 34. The question is how to stop altogether, right? That was the question. If I can't drink moderately, I'm obviously a real alcoholic. I have the physical allergy. I'm screwed. We have to be able to see that when we're in this step, I need to see the hopelessness of my situation, right? Like I said earlier, I need to have a gut level experience with this first step in order for me to really come to the conclusion that I'm a real alcoholic, that it's given me every example so far that once an alcoholic, always an alcoholic. It's never going to change. 25 years, 5 years, 25 years, 100 years, until the day I die, I'm going to have this physical, I'm not going to metabolize alcohol the way a normal person metabolizes alcohol. It's just the way it's going to be, right? I got to live with that. And that was a hopeless situation for me when I first got sober. That was a very hopeless feeling, right? Because I had a relationship with alcohol. It was like an abusive relationship. I was more married to alcohol than I was my family, my husband, anybody. And then you take that away from me, and then even though every single time I went back to it, I got the shit beat out of me, right? Every single time, especially towards the end. And then I get some time away, and then it didn't matter. I just go back, and then I get the shit beat out of me again. And then, and then I get some time away, and then, it is. It's like having an abusive relationship and keep going back and back. And then now I have to come to the conclusion that it has to be over. And there's a sad feeling. And I don't like that. And I don't want that. Why can't it work for me the way it did in the very beginning, right? Just like the abusive relationship, he was so good to me in the very beginning. Now he just keeps beating the shit out of me. I'll take him back this time. Maybe it'll be different. These are the same things that we keep saying to ourselves and what we had as a relationship. I put alcohol before my husband, before my kids, before everything, right? And then now you're going to take it away from me. Now what am I going to do? Now I have to replace it with something else. So if I can't drink moderately anymore, I can't drink at all. I was at a meeting last week. Was it Cliff? When was that? A couple nights ago. It was Friday night. I was at a meeting, Friday or Saturday night, at a meeting up in Escondido. I spoke up there, and it was a really good meeting. I shared for 20 minutes on the first step. I don't know why I was supposed to share my story, but for some reason I was just in the first step. And they had to draw afterwards. Then they had to draw numbers for people to share. Like you couldn't just share. Yeah. And I drew. Everyone that I drew was like so good. Like this is a powerful meeting. The second or third girl that I drew, she goes, "Oh fuck you guys! This was a speaker meeting. You're not supposed to call on me." She was really pissed. She goes, "Because I was on my way to the bar. I was on my way to the bar tonight, and you drew my number, and now I just came in here to listen, and now my number got drawn. There was 50 people in this room, and she shared. Like that meeting was divinely inspired, so she could hear that message. But she was in that position, and then afterwards, like there's so many Cliff shared, and Jamie shared, and all these like super powerful like heavy hitters were all sharing, and she heard everything she heard was what she needed to hear. Like you can't tell me that God's not real. Like that. Are you kidding me? That meeting was for that girl that night. She was in that same situation that I was in 14 years ago because she was so sad. She's like, I don't know if I can ever be separated from alcohol. I don't know, because we have that that attachment to it, that love for it, that love-hate relationship. And that's where she was. And I could just feel her pain, you know. Put yourself back in those days. Remember those days? Like, oh my God, my life is over. Like, really, I thought my life was over. Yeah. Like, how am I ever going to do anything anymore? How am I ever going to be social again? I was never even fucking social. Like, when I would drink, nobody wanted to be around me. Like, how am I going to go on vacation? Every time I go on vacation, I didn't remember my vacations because I drank myself into oblivion. How am I going to ever get work done? Because I think that I needed to drink. Because remember, I used to be able to drink and get work. I couldn't do anything. Now I was useless. But it's crazy, the delusion that we live in, you know, and to be in that place. And then we separate ourselves from this drink. And that's that pink cloud. You know, we give ourselves a period of time for a while. We're on that pink cloud. And we somehow seem to forget how horrible it was prior to us getting sober, how horrible those last days were, right? For those who are unable to drink moderately, the question is how to stop altogether. We are assuming, of course, the reader desires to stop. And that's the thing that we need to pray for. Everybody who we know is having the inability to stop is just to pray for the desire to stop. Because one thing that my will trumps God's will, because God's will, if God's will trumped our will, none of us would be sitting here, right? Because God's will would be that none of us were, our higher power's will is that none of us would be alcoholic. But because our will trumps our higher power's will, that's why we all sit here, because we can take it back every time because we lose the desire. So whether a person can quit on a non-spiritual basis depends upon the extent to which he has already lost the power to choose. The question is, have I lost the power to choose? When I put alcohol in my body, do I have any power, choice, or control over the amount that I drink or what I do after I drink? Many of us felt that we had plenty of character. There was a tremendous urge to seize forever, yet we found it impossible. This is the baffling feature of alcoholism as we know it. This utter inability to leave it alone, no matter how great the necessity or wish, it is beyond us, right? It is beyond us. That we can, like normal people who see us and how we behave and why in the hell wouldn't you want to stop? Look at your life. Oh my God, you've wrecked 3 cars. You've been in jail. Your husband's left you. Your kids hate you, you know? And yet, what is it about us that we just live in this delusion, but we're so married and so attached to the effect produced by alcohol and how it made us feel in the beginning. And we're always chasing the way it was in the beginning. And it's never going to be like that. We have to smash that idea. How then shall we help our reader determine to their satisfaction whether they are one of us? The experiment of quitting for a period of time will be helpful, but we think we can render even a greater service to alcoholic sufferers who perhaps to the medical fraternities. So we shall describe some in the mental states that precede the relapse. Oh, wait, I'm going to page 37, huh? Yeah. All right, good. So I'm going to talk about, so this is because obviously this is the crux of the problem. Jim, I love Jim. He's so funny. But so Jim is a guy who owned a car dealership. And then because of his drinking, he lost it and he had to sell it to somebody. So now he's working for the car dealership that he wants to own. So he's pissed, right? So now he's got a boss. When he was the boss and the owner of the car dealership, could you imagine? Like, can you imagine being a successful owner of a company, and then you got alcoholism got in the way, you lost everything, and then you're able to somehow keep the business alive, but now you have to go work for the business, for that business person that you sold it to. So you think he's got a little bit of a resentment? We'll learn that resentment's the number one offender, right? Because it says he's irritated, right? So he's got a little period of sobriety, right? He's got a period of sobriety. There's nothing to do with the physical allergies. He's got a period of sobriety. Everything's going good. He's got a little resentment, big deal. He thinks it's just a little resentment. Right? We told him what we knew of alcohol, and the answer we had found, he made at the beginning, his family was reassembled. He was someone that everybody liked, right? Everybody likes me when I'm sober, right? I'm actually a very likable person when I was just removing the alcohol. You remove the alcohol from Leanne, and I'm actually a pretty nice person, right? How many of you can relate to that? People like you better when you're not drinking. He made a beginning. His family was reassembled, and he began to work as a salesman for the business he once lost. But what did he do? He failed to what? He removed the alcohol, but there's some other steps that come along with just removing alcohol. Because if the physical problem was just our problem, and we didn't have a mental or a spiritual problem, then every single treatment center would have 100% success rate. But the reason why they don't is because they're not teaching us that we need to enlarge our spiritual life. So what happens? He failed to what? Enlarge his spiritual life. So here's the leading up to this, and then I'm gonna close with this in a few minutes. He found himself drunk a half a dozen times in succession. Okay, on each occasion, we worked with him, reviewing carefully what happened. He agreed that he was a real alcoholic. So even knowing that you're a real alcoholic, does that keep you sober? Understanding that, but if you think it's important that we understand what alcoholism, he knows that he's a real alcoholic. He knew he faced another trip to the asylum if he kept on. So he got drunk again. And then we asked him to tell us exactly how it happened. I remember I felt irritated. I had to be a salesman for a business I once owned. I had a few words with the boss, but nothing serious, and I decided to drive to the country. Just after a period of time, decides to drive to the country. Everything seems normal, right? What is the big misconception? Oh, the day that, your triggers could be, when something bad happens in your life, right? Like, or you hear people say, like if I ever, lost a loved one, then I drink again, or, if it's or if I lose my house or lose my job. I mean, we always have this misconception that if something bad happens, then I'm going to drink again, right? This isn't so with Jim. I love that they use this analogy. Everything's fine, right? I had to be a salesman for a concern I once had. I had a few words with the boss, but nothing serious. And I decided to drive to the country to see one of my prospects for a car. On the way, I felt hungry, so I stopped at the roadside place where they have a bar. I had no intention of drinking. Right? Alcoholism is non-intentional. I just thought I would get a sandwich. I also had the notion that I might find a customer for a car at this place. I think he was kidding himself, maybe a little bit, which was familiar, for I'd been going to this place for years. I'd eaten there many times. So this is a place that he frequented. He went and he ate there many times, right? When we are recovered from the seemingly hopeless state of mind and body, we can go into places where there's alcohol, right? I don't have to be prisoner from not being able to frequent places if I have a good reason to be there. The only time it's never a good reason if you're drug addicts to go over to your dealer's house. That's never a good reason, okay? I sat down at a table and ordered a sandwich and a glass of milk. Still no thought, right? No thought of drinking. Alcoholism is sudden. I ordered another sandwich and I decided I'd have another glass of milk. Suddenly, right? Alcoholism is suddenly, the thought crossed my mind. Like, I love this. It's in italics too. Like, they stopped the printing press so that you would pay attention to this, because this is hilarious. Because how many times did you think you had a good idea? Well, maybe if I had a full stomach, and milk is good for me. So if I put whiskey in my milk, I'm getting my calcium, so my bones will stay strong. So, maybe if I have a glass of milk with my whiskey, right? This is how this guy thinks. I ordered the whiskey, poured it into the milk, and I vaguely, right? Alcoholism is vague, right? I vaguely sensed that I was not being any too smart, but felt assured I was taking the whiskey on a full stomach. The experiment went so well. Wow, that first one went down so good. I think I'll have a second, right? Do you think he was actually making that decision, or do you think at this time the physical allergy had now taken effect, and he thinks he's making this decision to do that, but he knows that if he stops at this point, because he's already lied to himself. I'm going into this place because I might find someone I could sell a car to, right? You're not at a car lot, you're at a sandwich place. You know what I'm thinking? So he knows there's alcohol in there. He knows what's going on, right? He's already lied to himself. So he's thinking that I'm making this decision on my own. But what he's doing is he's trying to overcome this insatiable urge that has now taken over his body. So now he's taken a drink. But do you see what precedes the drink? And so now that vicious cycle starts off, and then he drinks again, and then he's off to And now he's off to the races, right? Then started one more journey to the asylum. Not the races. He's in the asylum now. There was a threat of commitment, the loss of family position, right? Now he's in that position that he was prior to the last 2 or 3 times that he was drinking. Now his family's going to be pissed at me. How many times did we let our family down? How many times, though, did we mean it when we said that we were good, we were done for good and for all? I meant it. That was never a lie. We're not liars. You know, I don't know about you, but when I said I was done, I meant it. You know, but I only had that moment, because the next minute I don't have, right? I don't have tomorrow. I don't have the next day. I had that moment, and I meant it in that moment. But then suddenly, right, I get an idea, right? Suddenly, strangely, I believe that if I can just, maybe if I just do a half a shot instead of a full shot in my milk, you know, just to where I can feel at ease, right? Just, that's always, see, I never was out to get drunk. I never wanted to get drunk, especially towards it. I just wanted to get right. I just wanted to get right. The problem was I didn't have an off switch like Jim, right? I would always go, wow, that went so well. Let's do it again. And then do it, and then oblivion, and then I never remember. Right? How many of you can relate to that? Yeah? Okay. All right. So whatever, how foolish, whatever the precise definition of the word may be, we call this plain insanity, right? The idea that things are going to be different this time is insane. If we have an allergic reaction to peanut butter, if your throat closes up to peanut butter, or if you break out in a rash, let's just say you just break out in a rash, like you don't want to eat peanut butter anymore, right? I don't want to have to put up with a rash, you know. But the difference between the allergy of peanut butter and alcohol is it's not accompanied. Peanut butter is not accompanied with a mental obsession and a spiritual malady. That's why we spend so much time in this. So ideas like just don't drink no matter what. Does that work for anybody? No? Just don't drink no matter what. When you hear people say just don't drink no matter what, how do I just not drink no matter what when I drink no matter what? I'm just like Jim. I could be just like Mr. Carpet Slippers if I fail to enlarge my spiritual life. Just not drinking no matter what, and those slogans don't work for me. What about put the plug in the jug? Does that work for you guys? Put the plug in the jug? Right? When you first quit drinking, if you just, okay, let's stop right here and just put a plug in the jug. Just put the lid back on. Like, no, I finished everything. Finished everything. I didn't have a problem leaving lobster on the plate, but I had a problem leaving a drink, right? Think the drink through. How about that? The book is going to tell me that my thinking is what got me here. Sometimes if I think the drink through, I think it sounds like a pretty good idea. Kind of like Jim, right? He thought it through. He did. He thought it through. He thought through the whole thing, and then look where it left him. How about pray the drink through? Maybe we should be telling people that instead of thinking it through. What's the difference? Remember, I don't know, some of you might be too young for this. Back during the Reagan administration, Nancy Reagan came out with the campaign for drugs. Just say no. Remember, we would laugh at that. Like, got a pile of cocaine sitting in front of me. Just say no. Oh my God, Nancy. You mean I could have had a V8, right? Like, I would just laugh at that. That was funny. But how different is and this is coming from someone, God bless her, it's coming from someone who's not an alcoholic, right? Just say no. Maybe did some of these slogans come from like hard drinkers? Because that may work for a hard drinker to just say no. And that may work for a hard drinker to just don't drink no matter what. Or, it helps if you don't drink in between meetings. And, some of those slogans and those saying, that may work for them, but doesn't work for me. I need to have a message with depth and weight. I need to really understand this first step. And I need to understand that my physical condition is not curable, and that my mental condition can be when my spiritual life is in order. Thank you.
Yay.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Christian. I'm an alcoholic. Wow, I'm really excited to be here. I'm sorry if you guys are disappointed for not seeing Pat up here. I enjoy seeing Pat. I love Pat. That's my sponsor. Hi, Zoomers. Yeah, so we're going to be talking more about this mental obsession. Is that better? Okay. And thank you, Leanne, for a great job. And yeah, it's really crazy to be up here, and I'll share a little bit of my experience, and I'll kind of go along with the book and the reading, and I'll make sure I let you know what page we're on, Mike. Yeah, so it's, we're talking about this insanity. The insanity, so it had in our assignments with 7, it said it had us list like all the insane things we did when we were drinking. And at the end of that, you would start to realize, okay, yeah, that's some really insane stuff. But what we really need to look at, and what I really needed to see, was that the true insanity wasn't the crazy insane things that I did while I was drinking. It was knowing full well all the things that I had done and that I'll probably do, because that's what happens every time I drink, or 99% of the time, I still drink. That's the insane thing. It's with a complete sober state of mind, or at least dry, no alcohol in the system, I make a decision to drink. And actually, that's a fallacy. I'm not even really making the decision at this point, because I don't have a decision, is what I've learned. But the insane idea always won out for me in the end. And despite, I drank, and every time I drank, I pretty much drove. I was the kind of guy that just had to be back in his own bed. And I drank and drove. I drove. Every time I drank, I drove home, usually, if I was driving. And I smoked weed every day. I'm grateful. I'm grateful for cocaine and crack to really accelerate my bottom and bring me here at the age of 25. I don't have the power of choice in regards to alcohol or drugs. So for me, there was no, oh, well, I think if I just lay off the hard drugs, the crack and the cocaine, maybe I can just do the alcohol and the weed. That thought crossed my mind for a while, but eventually I knew that every time that I drank, I was always having this not a craving, but this obsession to do cocaine. And then once I do cocaine, I do crack and lots of other crazy shit. But anyways, it's like kind of back to what Leanne had said, and what in the book here, it's like nobody likes to admit we're real alcoholics. And I don't even think I really knew what that was when I first got here. I really thought that an alcoholic was maybe someone who had a DUI, that was homeless, that went to jail. But I don't have any of those for me to think that I'm an alcoholic. I had to really have it pointed out to me, and I really had to hit bottom and to realize that I can never ever safely use alcohol or any drugs of any type. I can't control it. I can't manage it. It says here that countless vain attempts to prove we could drink like other people. I didn't want to drink like other people. Drinking like other people, one or two, doesn't appeal to me. Like, I drink for oblivion. I drink for effect. And now I might have told myself, oh, I love the taste of beer, and what they called microbrewery back then. Now it's what is it? Craft beer. Yeah, so I think I was drinking for the taste, but if I had the choice between a craft beer with no alcohol and a craft beer with, I'm going to go with the alcohol every single time. But I don't want to drink like other people. And yeah, I did have the obsession that maybe I could drink and not do cocaine. I could drink and somehow manage my life a little bit better. But the way I drink, the mental obsession always brings me back to the drink, and it always brings me back to the drug. I was a daily pot smoker for 10 years. Relatively speaking, I would say I had a short run. If I were to speak to maybe a normal person and told them all the things that I did when I was out there, they would think I was insane. But you get into a room full of people here, you start getting like the low bottom snobbery, like, oh, well, I shot dope in my neck and I used toilet water to, fix my rig. And it's like, like I start to think my story isn't that bad, but it is. I guarantee you it's that bad. It was for me, at least. Yeah, nowhere else do we try and seek lower to impress people. But I really did want to drink and carry on somewhat of a normal life, and I couldn't in the end. the way that I drink, once I put that alcohol in, it sets off that allergy, and that goes with anything that I've really done. It goes with alcohol, it goes with weed, it goes with cocaine, it goes with crack. I just wanted, I guess, be able to feel the way I felt and not have all the consequences happen, kind of drink and use without consequences. And, it also had talked about, we were trying to control and enjoy our drinking. It's like if I was controlling my drinking and using, I was never enjoying it. And if I was enjoying it, I certainly wasn't controlling it. So, the insane things that, again, back to the insane things that I was doing was, when I was drinking, was obviously I'm driving every time I drink, I'm driving drunk. I'm driving friends. I'm driving nephews. I'm driving kids in my car drunk. I don't have any kids, but there were kids in the back of my car. I think it was my nephews maybe. And friends, kids. But it's like, I'm driving across U.S. borders, trafficking, it wasn't that big of a deal, but bringing about a good amount of quantity of weed or drugs across the border. When I went down to TJ, taking it on planes, like these are some of the insane things I did. What else did I put? I don't even remember what I had put, but some I probably don't want to share. It's really kind of messed up. Maybe on a later, but anyways, yeah. So with me, it also went into, like, I crossed that line to where I did stuff that I thought I'd never do. I started using needles. I didn't do it a lot, but I started using needles. And it's like, these were some of the insane things that I did. But again, that wasn't, the insanity was I drank and I picked up that drink in a sober state of mind or a dry state of mind, knowing that this is usually what happens when I do that. And that's the insanity. I'm going to go into kind of what it talks about in some circumstances, page 37, third paragraph. In some circumstances, we've gone out deliberately to get drunk, feeling ourselves justified by nervousness, anger, worry, depression, jealousy. I like to put happiness because that was a great reason to go out and drink too. But even this type of beginning, we're obliged to admit that our justification for a spree was insanely insufficient in the light of what just happened. That, yeah, I would use needles, or I'd steal from my mom, or I'd drive drunk, or I'd spend all my money on drugs, yeah, it was insane. But, I felt a lot of times I deliberately went out, but sometimes I wasn't I thought I was making the choice, but I wasn't. And it seems like the obsession for me was disguised as just a really good idea. It just seemed like a really good idea because, and I will tell you, if I got the feeling, the effects from peanut butter that like alcohol or like drugs would do for me, I would slam peanut butter if it gave me that feeling. I don't care if I would get a rash, but so that's the difference. I mean, yeah. But peanut butter doesn't produce that effect. I love the effect produced by alcohol. I love the effect produced by every drug that I ever did. I had some favorites though. And the reason being is, and we'll get more into this later on, is there's this underlying current, this unrest, this dis-ease, this spiritual malady that shows up in my life in the form of, which we'll get into, the bedevilments. But if I'm sitting as an alcoholic who wants to feel good all the time, I found a recipe for regulating happiness by just drinking or smoking or doing whatever. If I found that recipe and I know alcohol and drugs works, I'm going to go to that every time despite the consequences. But if I'm an alcoholic, untreated, without a spiritual solution, and I'm sitting in these bedevilments with having problems with relationships, I can't keep girlfriends, my family's angry at me, I have no purpose in my life. My only purpose is to drink and use and to check out and not feel the way I'm feeling. If I'm constantly sitting in fear and all the other things that it talks about in the 52 of I was a prey to misery, I was a prey to depression. If I'm sitting in that long enough, the obsession will return, and it's promised. And it's been my experience that if I'm sitting in elation and things are great and I'm excited, the the obsession will return if I'm an alcoholic, if I'm the real deal. If I'm the person who has the physical allergy and the mental obsession, it's going to come back every time. And so I don't even know. It's going to start talking about we need a spiritual solution for the spiritual malady. It's like, what the hell is a spiritual malady? What does a spiritual solution have to do with any of this? It's just, it's so hard to like I want to be able to define things. I want to be able to see things. I want to be able to touch things before I really start going into and diving all in on this. But for me, I was in such pain. I weighed 125 pounds. I was sucked up, malnourished. I couldn't really make a living. The only thing that kept me alive was my mom, and she was so codependent and just allowing me to stay in her house and put up with the shit that I did. But but it's like in the beginning for me, it was like I knew that I wasn't able. I knew I had no control. I knew I had no choice, and I knew that because I had tried. I didn't try and towards the end of my career, until the end of my I never got paid for it. Till the end of my drinking and using. I didn't, I drank and used without consequences for a long time. And what I mean is the consequences for me weren't bad enough. So it allowed me to go out and continue doing what I did and seek out this really just drinking and using was my life. And so let me get back into this. I'm kind of jumping around. Our behavior is absurd, bottom paragraph 37, our behavior is absurd and incomprehensible with respect to the first drink, that of an individual with a passion, say, for jaywalking. And I'm going to read this twice. I'm going to go with what it said about within our assignment. It talked about the jaywalker, and it says replace it with drinking. So we'll read it first with the jaywalking, and then we'll get into the drinking and smoking crack. Our behavior is a bit absurd and incomprehensible with respect to the first drink, as that of an individual with a passion, say, for jaywalking. He gets a thrill out of skipping in front of fast-moving vehicles. He enjoys himself for a few years in spite of friendly warnings. Up until this point, you would label him as a foolish chap having queer ideas of fun. Luck then deserts him, and he's slightly injured several times in succession. You would expect him, if he were normal, to cut it out. Presently, he's hit again, and this time has a fractured skull. Within a week after leaving the hospital, a fast-moving trolley car breaks his arm. He tells you he has decided to stop jaywalking for good, but in a few weeks, he breaks both legs. On through the years, this conduct continues, accompanied by his continual promises to be careful to keep off the streets altogether. Finally, he can no longer work. His wife gets a divorce, and he is held up to ridicule. He tries every known means to get the jaywalking idea out of his head. By the way, a jaywalker is someone who crosses the street where there's not a crosswalk. I don't know if I needed to explain that to anyone. Maybe I needed to know that when I first got here. But the day comes out, he races out in front of the fire engine again, which breaks his back. Such a man would be crazy, wouldn't he? You might think our illustration is, okay, that's the jaywalker. So we're going to replace this with drinking and some other stuff. So my behavior is absurd and incomprehensible with respect to the first drink or drug as that of an individual, let's say, for drinking or drugging or smoking crack or smoking weed. He gets a thrill out of drinking, hanging out in bars, hanging out at the dealers at crack houses. He enjoys himself for a few years in spite of friendly warnings, maybe a car crash, a girlfriend broke up with me, people are angering me, I've lost jobs. These are some friendly warnings. Up until this point, you might label me or yourself to be, what is it, a chap? What is the opposite of chap? What do they call them? That's a guy. What's a girl? A chap? Whatever. Having queer ideas of fun. Luck then deserts him or her, and he goes on a major bender again, and several times in succession. You would expect him, if within a week after leaving the hospital, I go back to the dealers and back to the bar, and I'm on another bender. Here, he tells you, I've told you that I decided to stop drinking and using for good, but in a few weeks, I'm out drinking again and doing drugs. by his continual promises to be careful or to keep out of the bars or hang out with old friends or using buddies. And finally, he can get no longer get work. No one would hire me. When you weigh 125 pounds, sucked up like I do, you hide your money. Hide your wife. And then instantly it's like, oh my God, I need to get some Coke. Call the dealer and then go to the dealer's house, do a bunch of lines, get a bag, and then come back and to go to my mom's house, which I was living at the time. And you still got to keep kind of keep this hidden. So I would turn on the bath and I'd be in there for like an hour and a half. Mom thinks I'm taking a bath or taking showers. And I'm cooking crack, standing with, this is what it was. Like, this was exciting for me in the last few days. Like, that's what I was looking for, and that's what I wanted, and that's sick. I don't want that anymore, and my life is a lot better than. But anyways, I got from the. He tells you, decides to drop on through the years. This conduct continues, accompanied by his continual promises to be careful. Oh yeah, to stay out of the bars, and finally, no longer working. His wife gets a divorce. I didn't have a girlfriend. He tries every known means to get the walking idea and the using idea out of my head. He shuts himself up in a rehab. So I went to rehab, hoping to mend my ways. I truly thought that I was an alcoholic, but at this point, I didn't really know what an alcoholic was. I truly thought that the physical allergy or the physical of me drinking, me smoking, I thought that was the problem. And I thought if that problem is removed, that's probably 99% of the issue here. So just stop drinking. Everything's going to be great. Rehab will teach me my little trigger signals, my relapse warning prevention plan. And this is all good and all, but anyways, so I go back to, where does it say here? So I go to rehab, hoping to mend my ways, but the day comes and I race back to the bars, which sets me off on another spree. And such a man would be crazy, wouldn't he? Yes. So that kind of, it's a great example of the mental obsession of like these blank spots, not remembering all the crazy shit I did. It's vaguely, Leanne talked about how these thoughts in my head just come suddenly and vaguely. Like I don't really quite remember. It talks about there is a solution that we can't bring into our memory with sufficient force, or can't bring into our consciousness with sufficient force the memory of pain and suffering from a week or even a month ago. Like we are out without defense against the first drink. I have no mental defense against the first drink. And it's my experiences constantly started to show that in the end. And so when I went to this rehab and I went there for 2 months, and you do it and you do in rehab. You do the first 3 steps. I learned my trigger signals, and I learned that AA is a good thing, and I probably need to do it. But I didn't truly understand that. I really thought, since this was really the first time that I truly wanted to be sober, that I knew that alcohol and drugs was a problem in my life, and I knew that I didn't want it in my life anymore. And I figured, armed with this self-knowledge and a strong desire to not drink and to not do drugs, that was sufficient. That was enough. That was enough to keep the obsession away. And if the obsession came up, play the tape through. But it's like, I can't even play the tape through, and the tape doesn't even seem that bad, because all I can remember is how good it feels to get high, how good it feels, how the relief and the release that I get from the drink. That doesn't happen with normal people because they don't have this physical allergy. So some of you are thinking, yes, what you tell us is true, but that doesn't fully apply. We admit we have some of these symptoms, but we have not gone to the extremes you fellows did, nor are we likely to. For we understand self-knowledge triggers ourselves so well that what you have told that such things cannot happen again. And so that was where I was at. I was looking at a lot of people. I'm like, you guys are really bad off. I was pretty bad off, but I think now armed with this self-knowledge, that I'm going to give this a go, and I really want to stay sober, and I think I can do it. And I truly thought I could. I really wanted to stay sober, honestly wanted to stay sober. But if I don't have a spiritual solution in place, if I'm not continuing to go on through the rest of the steps, I become miserable. I become restless, irritable, and discontent. And I only know one thing to do when I'm in that situation, and that's to drink and use. And I don't have a choice. I think I'm making the choice, but I'm not. It's that these mental blank spots, and that's the insanity here. And the insanity is that I think I have the choice. The insanity is that I think that I can control it. Maybe I can just stay away from smoking crack. Maybe if I just keep it to alcohol and weed, I can somehow manage my life. I can somehow maybe just keep things together, and I don't know. Maybe just stay off the hard stuff. I'll be okay. And so at the bottom of 38, I'm just finishing up. So we have not lost everything in life through drinking, and we certainly do not intend to. I didn't intend to. Thanks for the information, Alcoholics Anonymous. Thank you, Rehab. Thank you, sponsor, for your time when you first brought me through the first 3 steps back in 98. Thank you. I appreciate the information. It's been very informative. Now that I'm armed with this information, I got this. That may be true of certain non-alcoholic people, but who drink, how are we doing? Okay. Okay. Oh, snap, really? Okay, so, but the actual or potential alcoholic, with hardly exception, will absolutely be unable to stop drinking on the basis of self-knowledge. I've already gone into that. This point we wish to emphasize and re-emphasize to smash home upon our alcoholic readers, as it has been revealed to us out of our bitter experiences, is, do I believe that I'm absolutely unable to drink, stop, or stay stopped based on the basis of self-knowledge? I cannot stay stopped on the basis of self-knowledge, and my experience proves that. Fred goes into, basically, I won't get into this too much because I do have to kind of wrap it up. That went really, really fast. But Fred's a dude who went through, he couldn't admit the first step. He couldn't admit that he was the real alcoholic, which probably meant he probably didn't think that he had this allergy, or maybe it was the allergy, but didn't have the obsession. So he couldn't admit this first step, and he certainly didn't believe in the second step. It's like, if I am not thoroughly convinced that I have this allergy and the mental obsession that brings me to this allergy, which brings me to death, alcohol is to die for me. If I'm not convinced of that, then obviously I feel like I have some type of power or choice or power to choose in this matter. Fred thought the same thing. Fred thought that since he couldn't believe in the second step, which means he had to search out some type of power, Fred thought he had power. He had power to choose. And it was out of his experience and with this thought that he had power to choose whether he could drink or not, to control it or stay stopped. He went out and drank again. And, Bill and them was it Bill? I forget. They talked to him a bit about step 1, about his alcoholism. And he had said he had some of the symptoms, but he had to go out and get really, and it had to get bad for him, and he had to go back to the hospital and had a bad case of the jitters or the shakes, and realized that he said, I frankly did not, on page 40 on Fred's here, the second paragraph, I frankly did not believe it would be possible for me to drink again. I truly didn't think I was going to drink and use again. I appreciated the ideas that about your subtle insanity, which precedes the first drink, but I was confident it could not happen to me after what I had learned, my relapse trigger signs and meetings to go to and just going to meetings. I realized, I reasoned I was not so far advanced as you fellows, that I had been usually successful licking my other personal problems, and that I would therefore be successful where you men failed. And I had no problem refusing drinks for a while, but towards the end, I'm sitting in bars, miserable, just looking at all you guys having fun. And I don't have any other way of truly, really having fun or having like any sort of contentment in my life if I don't have a spiritual solution in place. And eventually the guy drank, and Fred drank, and not only had I been off guard, I had made no fight whatever against the first drink. This time I had thought of I had not thought of the consequences at all. When I relapsed, I wasn't thinking about consequences. I was thinking about once I did relapse, I'd run into people from Alcoholics Anonymous and they would see that I was high. But I couldn't think of a lot of the consequences that had happened up to that point. And there was no defense. No defense came up, a mental defense against me taking that drink. And in that moment, Fred knew that he had an alcoholic mind. And I knew once I had relapsed, and I knew I could never do this again. And that's a scary thought for an alcoholic, to imagine life without alcohol and without drugs, because that was the only release and the only peace and the only really good feeling that I had gotten out of life was that. And my life revolved around that and getting that feeling. So to imagine life without alcohol is a scary thing, but it got bad, and it got bad enough for me to seek out the solution and to get into this work. And I'm so grateful for Alcoholics Anonymous that has a solution to my problem and to our problem. We have this common solution. We have this common problem of the allergy, the physical allergy, the mental obsession, and we have this common solution, which is the program and the steps outlined in what we'll go through in the 103 pages. Let me just look here a little bit more, and I'll wrap it up here. I was hopeless. I knew I had to throw several lifelong conceptions out the window through this program of action. I knew I had to give myself to this process. I didn't know what seeking a spiritual solution meant, but I knew that in my step 2, once going through this part in step 1, I knew that I could no longer drink for the rest of my life, one day at a time. And I knew I couldn't do it on my own. I knew I had no choice. I knew that I had no power of choice, and that something needed to change. And I knew that this process, I came to believe in Alcoholics Anonymous and the steps as a way of returning me to sanity. I knew that I came to believe in the power of Alcoholics Anonymous to return me to sanity, for me to give me the power to not have that obsession, to remove the obsession out of my life. And if this whole spirituality God thing is weird to you, just go through this process and go through this book and break it down and see, if you become as hopeless as I am and most of us were when we first came here, you might want to seek out some other solution other than what you've been doing up to this point. I knew I no longer wanted to live the way I was living, even though the thought of what life was looking like in the future was scary too. I never wanted to go back to the way I was living. And I'll finish up with this and then we're done. So on 43, this is some of the doctors saying, what you say about the general in the second paragraph. Many doctors and psychiatrists agree with our conclusions. One of these men, staff member of world-renowned hospital, recently made this statement to some of us. What you say about the general hopelessness of the average alcoholic's plight is, in my opinion, correct. As to 2 of you men whose stories I have heard, there is no doubt in my mind that you are 100% hopeless apart from divine help. Had you offered yourselves as patients at this hospital, I would not have taken you. If I had been able to avoid it, people like you are too heartbreaking. Though not a religious person, neither was I have found respect for the spiritual approach in such cases as yours. For most cases, this last paragraph usually summarizes what we just talked about in this whole thing with Miller about alcoholism. And he's done so in this last page. Once more, the alcoholic at certain times has no mental defense against the first drink, except in few rare cases, neither he nor any other human being can provide such a defense. His defense must come from a higher power. Why did I think that a higher power would be my only reason? And I was in such a dark place when I got here in the beginning. It's like I didn't know what I needed, but I knew what I didn't need. And it was suggested in loving ways, sometimes not so loving ways, that this process will set me free. These steps will set me free. So I was willing to believe in this higher power that I didn't think would work for me. And that's all I really needed, was a willingness to believe that this process could work. This process could save me, could set me free, and could give me a purpose worth living. And that's what I found. So at this point, we're done with the mental obsession. We'll go into next week talking about the spiritual malady, which sets off the phenomenon of craving, or the mental obsession. And I'm just, again, really grateful for you guys sitting through all of this and listening. And thanks again, Zoomers. And thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
All right, we have a time for a few shares. Thank you for bringing up triggers. That
Triggers.
morning was my trigger. Right? Like, if we're looking at triggers, maybe I should just sleep all day because I'm a morning drinker. Seriously, morning was a trigger. So triggers. I hate that word. Okay. Would someone like to come up and share? We have time for a couple shares. We'll do one share here live and then one Zoomer. So see if there's a Zoomer that wants to share. Anybody want to come up and share?
Anybody want to share?
On the mental obsession, the crux of the problem. Come on, you guys. I'll call it. Can I call it?
I'm Mary Jo. I'm the addict.
Hi, Mary Jo.
Super intimidating to share at this meeting. So I have nearly 4 years clean, and I came to a point where, like, I work steps through NA, and I have a lot of the knowledge. I know a lot of the solutions and all the things, the self-awareness, and I found myself in a place where, like, I didn't want to die, but didn't want to live, and it's scary to be there after having done, like, all the work I did. And we got to the part in the book where there's a solution. I'm like, great, what is the solution to my mental obsession? And it was just digging deeper into the first step, and I'm just thinking, I don't need that, but as, like, I dug deeper into it, like, I just realized how powerless I am. And lately I've been real envious of the newcomer, because of, like, the humility and the desperation they have. And I don't have that I used to have. Like, on the outside, life is so good, but inside I have that, I'm a mess. And you can't tell by looking at me, and I don't know how to tell you that's what's going on with me. And, it's like we broke down with my step study, we broke it down, and I realized, like, I think the fact that relapse isn't part of my story is a reservation for me. Like, I think I'm storing that, like, one more time. Like, I could do that. I could do it and come back and have, qualify more to be here, have a lower bottom, be able to say, this happened. And I just think I'm really glad that God brought me here, and to be able to hear the message that you guys have each week. And so thank you for letting me share.
You don't have to go back out there. There's a great saying in Tommy Boy that you can get a good look at a T-bone steak by sticking your head up a cow's ass, but wouldn't you rather take the butcher's word for it? You can take all of our words for it, that it's not any better out there. You don't need to have a relapse. And the woman that spoke last week is my sponsor, and she's got 30 years sober, and she's never relapsed. So you could take it to meditation. You don't have to do the Marty Man suggestion to try a couple drinks or do that. You could take it to meditation and ask yourself how that would feel if you were to you could take yourself there without actually having to do it. So I'm glad you're here.
Yeah.
Okay. Glad you're here. Any Zoomers?
I'm going to share tonight.
Okay.
Yay. Yeah.
I'm
going to take this one for the team.
Okay. Hold on a second, Karen.
Okay.
I think that last leg is coming in.
Oh, okay. Okay.
All right.
Oh.
I can't see anybody.
Wait, I gotta turn the volume up. This is always such a pain in the ass. Sorry, Karen, hold on a
That's
second.
okay. That's okay.
Everything's falling.
Really throwing me around tonight. I feel
I know.
bullied.
Wait, can you see everybody now?
I can. Hi.
Okay, go ahead. You're good.
Hey, I'm an alcoholic in a lot of things, and my name is Karen. It's so good to be here tonight. I love being on here and with all my Zoom pals. And what a great presentation tonight, Leanne and Christian, and absolutely beautiful. So you know what? This chapter we read tonight really should be called More About Relapse, because that's what we just read about. You know what I mean? In more about alcoholism. And what I came to understand about this in step one is that I have a war between my mind and body. And it doesn't end because my mind gets so squirrely that it begs my body to do what it can't do. And my mind is always going to win. It's never a matter of that I can't drink. It's that I'm going to drink. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. So in this, I have a perfect storm story that I'll share. I identify with the man of 30 because I lived in the land of sobriety for 20 years. I stopped drinking at 23 and using drugs because I was physically sick. And I stayed dry, came to some meetings, did a few things, but I stayed dry. And alcoholism got really busy over that 20 years, chewing on other chew toys. And I stayed really sick and got a lot sicker. So like the man of 30, after 20 years, even though it wasn't in my mind on the surface that I was going to drink again someday, it was in there somewhere. I had a reservation. There was something I didn't believe, that I wasn't surrendered to. And I treated alcoholism with alcohol because that's all I knew. So I had one big major relapse after 20 years, but it was enough. And I stayed out for 6 years and got a lot sicker during that time. So that's my man of 30 story. And then Jim, the car salesman, that this is the perfect storm. The day that I picked up after the 20 years, I was like Fred and Jim at the same time, because I didn't have a care in the world, but I was pissed at my business partner. And we owned a beauty salon together, and I was mixing sangria on Cinco de Mayo in 2006, taking some vicarious pleasure, like the book says. And in a moment, I had a glass of sangria in my hand. You could not have told me that there was anything in that glass that was going to hurt me. That mental blind spot was right there. That mental twist that alcohol will work was alive and well, and I didn't see it coming, and not a cloud on the horizon. And I drank that, and it happened so quickly that within 48 hours, I almost killed myself with alcohol drinking, because that beast was right there that said, thank you very much. We're going to get busy now. So get out a pen. We're going to write down a list of everything we haven't drank. So in that time, and nothing, I couldn't remember anything. It was like backing up a car with the blind spot, and I couldn't see behind me. And that's what that looked like for me. And so coming back, actually Friday this week, I will celebrate my 8th AA birthday of in a recovered state. Woo! So, and I know that if I wake up Friday, I will be a sober woman still, because I have that knowing inside that I keep doing this. I keep in this book. I keep in this work. And a day at a time, I live the reprieve. Mm-hmm. So this is where this is at. This is one of the most important chapters in this book, because this shows us that literally it doesn't matter what's happening in our lives, that when you're alcoholic, you will treat alcoholism with alcohol unless you come to this solution. So God bless everybody. Thank you for letting me share.
Yeah. Thanks, Karen. All right. That's awesome. Okay. What? Yeah. Wait, Mike wants to really quick. Go ahead.
quick, Mike, recovered addict.
Hey, Mike.
Thank you guys so much. I know it's getting kind of late. Let me just end with this because there was such great words I heard. Leanne, thank you. Christian, you're amazing. You're hitting your stride for sure. Super good looking.